will be turning things over to our great moderator, Val Brown. She is the Director of Future of Learning at the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. And she'll be leading our conversation here on stage. She'll be joined by Moez Limayem, the President of the University of North Florida, Kimberley Gregorie, a talent transformation partner and speaker at KWG Consulting, Lorraine Stomski, the Chief Talent Officer at Walmart, and Candace, Thille, Associate Professor at Stanford, and the Faculty Director of Workforce at the Stanford Accelerator for Learning. So we're really excited about their conversation, and so we're thrilled to bring them out. So here for a conversation on driving economic mobility, please give it up for our first panel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Val Brown, and I'm very excited to serve as the moderator for this incredible panel today. A shout out to any first-time attendees. Please make some noise. We also have some on the panel. I'm also a first-time attendee, and I can tell you I've been saying this word. This is a lot. So thank you all for being here. At the Carnegie Foundation, our mission is to catalyze transformative change in education so that every young person has the opportunity to live a healthy, dignified, and fulfilling life. And so for us, that also means economic mobility, right? Because if as a country we believe that college, education, school is a pathway out of poverty, we have to get serious about what that means. And so today, we know that AI is here. It is not going anywhere. And we also know that we can't just sprinkle AI on our problems and solve them, right? And so we have to be really intentional about the choices that we make to drive economic mobility in this new world, right? And so our panel here today will lead us in a discussion to kick that off. All right. So let's start with that first question that I have for the group. Researchers, including Raj Chetty, have found that children who grow up in communities with more cross-class interaction are much more likely to rise out of poverty, right? So we know, again, it's not just you can make it on your own. So my first question for the group, given that correlation between economic connectedness in communities and upward mobility for individuals, how can AI technologies be harnessed to facilitate greater cross-class interaction and social cohesion? So Lorraine, I'm looking at you because we're going to start with you. Love to hear your thoughts.
All right, I get to warm us up. So let me just start maybe with the community piece of it. And for those of you who don't know or are not familiar with Walmart, although I would say there are how many attendees? 7,000 attendees here?
I think it's
7,000. Yeah. So we have 6,300 of those 7,000 live within 10 miles of a Walmart. So if you can imagine, many of us in this room, the majority of us in this room, Walmart is really a representation of our beautiful, diverse communities that we all live in. So I would also say that at Walmart, if you go into any Walmart store, our associates will tell you they feel that they are members of that community, that they engage with them, they have great relationships. So that's the community piece. So how does Walmart take distinct advantage of that fact, and where does AI play a role? So maybe just a couple things to talk about there. Number one, for many in the community, Walmart is their first job. So we have a lot of high school students that, this is their first job, many adults. We've got a range of all ages. And the one thing that we do with AI is we actually really strive to simplify their jobs. Why is that important? As you can imagine, there's so many mundane tasks that can happen in a store. And for AI to be able to simplify that so that it takes time out of doing something extremely manual, and then it gives you a lot more time actually to interact with our customers and community. That creates that personalization. It puts the humanity, if you will, back into those jobs. The second thing that I feel really, really proud of is that AI is helping us identify access to opportunity and career pathways for our associates. Many people think of Walmart as like, your hourly job, that it's, like I said, it's the first job, but we actually have cybersecurity analysts, we have pilots, we have engineers. I mean, you can name any kind of job, we've got it there. So the ability for us to use AI to say, what is this associate's profile? What are their skills, their aspirations? What do they dream about? And for us to be able to take that data and say, hey, guess what? Based on your experiences, your skills that you have, we actually think you should think about being an operator or a merchant. And that gives us the opportunity to then, really create those pathways, accelerate it through learning, and, create a path for everyone. So to me, AI is like an incredible unlock for our associates to actually create that economic mobility so that they can get into higher paid jobs.
Kim.
They reminded us we had to actually speak into the microphone, and I started the opposite way. So agree with everything you said, and I think this will be a good ad. The first thing I want to do, though, is how many people in here have been to an AI session before this one? Right, there's been so many, and I want to just say, wow, thank you to ASU+GSV for bringing this topic here in so many different venues, because this is what we should be doing. We should be talking about it. And I say that because when Val first spoke to all of us, I went to a friend of mine and said, I'm going to be on this panel for AI. I'm not an expert on AI. And she looked at me and said, no one is. And I think that's the point. It's so fast, it's moving, the pace. And so none of us are the expert, but we need to have conversations together, debate together, bring the conversation forward and really talk about it. So I think that this is an amazing way to do it here at ASU+GSV. The next thing I would say is, like you, my glass is half full when it comes to AI. I am over the moon with what this can do in the talent space. And the reasoning for that is when we think about the workforce and our frontline workers, we have so much hidden talent, misplaced talent, and when we start to think about what AI can do. So in the future, if you could have something that would tell you, Kim has the following abilities, that may not be on that job description, but Kim can do these things. Kim is good at these things, and that aligns with what you need. And when you can take that down to local levels so that you can help people within local markets be able to match themselves to roles very effectively. We're trying today, but we don't do it really, really, really well. The other thing I would say is when people have gaps, AI is going to provide them with those personalized learning paths in the context of how they want to learn and can help them get to where they want to go. And then lastly, it can help us to break down those language barriers. But the thing I really want to talk about here too is sort of a real life experience you and I talked about. So I have, because we're sitting here talking about where people should go and where talent should be and how do you get them in the right places. And I have a nephew who actually graduated from the Marine Corps base right over here 2 years ago in San Diego. He did not know what to do with his life, could not afford to go to college. How many of us know someone who cannot afford to go to college? Yes? I would think there'd be more people, but anyway. There are, right, like we know of people who he couldn't afford it, and he chose to go into the Marines. He's going to come out of the military if he chooses to do that, and he's going to have all these skills he developed. But is he going to know what to do with them? I assure you he is not. And we need to, as a society, use AI to help someone like my nephew be able to come out of serving in our military and be able to come into the civilian workforce and have a viable career that gives him economic prosperity. So it's just, it's a reality, right? And I just think we all need to embrace it.
Thank you for making that personal. Moez, I know you.
Thank you, Val. First of all, I'm so grateful that the magician did not make me disappear from the panel. So, but in all seriousness, this question and this topic brought back some memories regarding my doctoral dissertation, where I did research on how can we train human facilitators to improve interactions in groups, communications, better understanding, conflict resolutions, consensus reaching. And what I found in my research that actually when we train human facilitators, the performance and the communication and the interactions in groups, in diverse groups, improves a lot. And the performance of these facilitators improve further, even with some basic technologies for group decision-making, group interactions. Fast forward now, almost 30 years, this is exactly what I believe artificial intelligence can do in terms of helping with very complicated social interactions, cultural awareness, improving the interactions and better understanding of diverse points of view. So I really believe we can use artificial intelligence to help in that class-to-class interaction communications to better get rid of the barriers between classes, improve connectiveness, and alleviate some of the negative impact of artificial intelligence. Thank you.
I'm hearing the need for human-centered design in all of this, right? Candace.
Yeah, so I'm going to build on what all three of you have said, because this notion that you can start with someone who has a certain set of knowledge and skills and then support them to develop another set or refine their knowledge and skills so that they can move to a different position, that's kind of what you're all talking about. But everyone always says, and then this personalization and magic path will happen that will magically help that person move from their current state to their desired state. And that's where the science needs to be brought in. There are multiple strategies that one could use to support someone from where they are to get them to where they get to next. And the science isn't really there yet to say what the best next thing is for that person to do. And one of the values of the AI is as we collect more and more of these data, which we'll be talking about in a moment, we can start to model those data to think about, for this learner, trying to build this knowledge or capability, in this context, what would be the next best strategy to support them? So we're not building learning paths anymore. We're building dynamic recommendations, always keeping the learner's agency at the center and supporting that learner to make the best decision for their own learning as they can.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I hear some applause. You can do that.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Learner agency.
Thank you.
Human learner agency.
That's right. Okay, and so we recognize, though, that there is some fear and apprehension around AI. Pew Research Center shows that 61% of Americans are concerned about AI's impact on job automation and inequality. And then a survey by the World Economic Forum found 84% of respondents believe that ethical issues surrounding AI are significant and need to be addressed. My own previous AI experience was all related to Terminator 2, so I'm nervous. So how do these apprehensions influence public attitudes and behaviors toward AI adoption? And what are some strategies, as you talked about, that can be employed to address or alleviate some of these concerns? We have several people who want to weigh in on this one. Moez, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Val. I think the first step for us is to really better understand these apprehensions, these concerns. We've heard them throughout this conference. Jobs displacement, privacy, fairness, biases, and so on and so forth. I think once we understand this, we have to be careful because perceptions do matter. Labels do matter. When we attach these labels to artificial intelligence, the behavior will change. My best analogy, imagine you're in a grocery store, and instead of having shelves that says snacks, it says poisons. The behavior of people will completely change, and I guarantee you that nobody will be even close to the shelves that indicate poisons. So that's why I think we have to work on these perceptions. In my view, as educator, the best way is always training and educations. This is how we can change these perceptions. We have to prioritize ethics, transparencies, and that is not just in the use of AI, but also in the development of AI. I think we have to put in place very rigorous audit processes in businesses, in universities, for data, for models, to make sure we assure security and data privacy. And I think we have to develop very well-articulated governance structure that emphasize accountability. People are worried about AI because you don't know at the end of the day who is accountable where disasters hit. So a clear governance structure with clear accountability roles and lines are necessary to try to fight these labels, if you want, and make sure that the AI is used in the most ethical, effective, and efficient way.
Lorraine, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, happy to. So maybe I'll take it with the lens of a psychology, and I'm a psychologist by training, and one of the things I would say is when you're fearful of something, you know, face it. And so a couple things that we've thought about at Walmart and are doing, which is, to your point, Moez, training is super important. So one of the first things we did was we created boot camps around AI, just to really teach our associates about how to use it responsibly, how to practice. We, had a very much what I would call a playground, a safe sort of cordoned off playground called My Assistant, in which people could go in and put prompts in and start just using AI. And what we discovered was we got so much great feedback at Walmart. We have a really deep culture of listening. So you could go in, you could play around with it in a safe and governed way and get the feedback. And so what we've done with that feedback is we've said, okay, it's performance management time. We all love performance management, right? We said, wouldn't it be cool if we could use AI to help us sort of augment and give us a first pass at how we set goals and how we write those goals, how we eventually will be able to use that as an augmentation to maybe writing our first, performance review draft. So all these opportunities around sort of the scariness around it, we just went head in and said, we're going to equip you with the capabilities. And then secondly, we're going to listen and we're going to try some of this stuff out, but again, in a cordoned off, safe space. So that's where we are in our journey.
Me? All right. So when I think about this space, I really want to go to the job displacement that you mentioned, because I think that's really in the workforce where the fear is. At least it's where I saw the fear in my previous role. And I decided to, like you, let's go into the field and understand how people are feeling. What do people really think? And it's very different when you're across generations. I have an 18-year-old son, and he embraces this. He loves it. He just did a project on Gen AI. I learned a whole bunch for this panel from him. And I think that you have differences where we're worried about Terminator 1, 2, and 3. And so when I think about the workforce, when I went out and spoke to people, they said the same thing to me. Whether I was in Brooklyn, whether I was in San Antonio, Chicago, they said, I know the world is changing. I know I need new skills. I don't know what those skills are, but even if I did, I don't know how to get them here. And I think that if we went out and talked to people that work with you, they'd say the same things. Right? I don't know where to get this skill. I don't even know what it is. I am afraid my job's going to go away, but what do I do about it? And so for me, it really became about we need to educate people, which we're hearing from all of us. We need to bring forward these conversations. I love what you did with the playgrounds. And so when we start to think about that, people are worried about their job going away. Would we all agree with that? They're worried about my job is going to go away. I read something recently from a Harvard professor that said AI will not take a job from a human. A human who knows how AI works will take a job from a human. And I think that if we could just think of it that way, AI isn't going to take away any jobs. So we all need to get educated. But on that note, this isn't any different than any of the other revolutions we've been through, agricultural, industrial. Jobs change. So does everybody in this room, let's do it this way. Who doesn't have a cell phone? Anybody not have a cell phone? If you don't have a cell phone, please clap for me. Okay, here's my point. Back in the 90s, we had bag phones. I had a bag phone. I thought it was cool. It is not cool, but at the time, I thought it was really cool. And then in the 2000s, everybody got cell phones. We all got cell phones. So when we used to have people that worked at Southwestern Bell doing customer service jobs or answering the phone, those jobs don't exist anymore. Now you have a cell phone store on every single corner. And you've got Apple geniuses. My brother, Apple genius. That job didn't exist 24 years ago. It is the same thing we are going through. So really the responsibility is to sit down and understand what's happening. And I really think that I want to share, Burning Glass and SHRM did a recent white paper, and I would encourage you all to read it. And they really talked about 4 things, and I won't get into the detail, I'll just give you a little teaser of it. But they talked about recommending to business leaders and CHROs to evaluate their organization's composition, evaluate the roles within the organizations, consider your talent pipeline, and develop a game plan. So when you start to think about that, roles, some will go away, some will get augmented, some will just stay the same, but you need to understand that as a business. And so my hope for the future is that instead of us looking at and worrying about what jobs go away, we really begin to think about how we can skill people to be ready for what's coming. And so we're not removing them from roles, we're creating new career paths like an Apple genius.
Thank you. Thank you. Candace, I know you're passionate about this next kind of question that we're going to ask when it comes to transparency and accountability and how to be really thoughtful. So what questions or what should we be thoughtful about during this age of innovation? How do businesses and educational institutions ensure transparency and accountability in their practices?
Yes, so accountability in AI practices right now really boils down mostly to data. Where are the data collected from? How are they modeled? What purpose are they put to once they are modeled? And I have actually 2 things I'd like to say on that. One of them is in between my being at Stanford earlier and my being at Stanford again now, I spent 5 years as the director of learning science at Amazon. So innovating and scaling workplace learning for Amazon. And we got really good. We built an infrastructure that was able to take the learner's actions and from those actions model them and make really good estimates about what you were saying, about what that learner's skill set was relative to their desired skill set. And I spent a lot of time there protecting those data because when we said we're at performance management time, you could see that if all of these data that I have collected are able to make a really accurate prediction about that employee's performance, the only reason I was collecting those data was to give that employee feedback on where their skill set was relative to their desired skill set, and also so my system could make good recommendations to them about how to upskill and improve their skill set, but totally with the employee's agency. But there was a lot of pressure because a manager would like to know, oh, I need to hire a product manager or a software engineer for this project, and so tell me data, who are the good people I should hire? And fortunately, at least while I was there, Amazon agreed to not use those data in that way. So I could make the assurance to all of the employees that yes, we're collecting and modeling these data, but they will only be used for this purpose. Because you need that for people to authentically play and practice. I'm sure in your play space, if you had said to people, go ahead and play, but we're going to watch how you play, and based on how you're playing, that'll feed into your performance evaluation. How much playing do you think people would do? None. So this notion of what data are we collecting? How are we collecting it? How is it being modeled? And then what are the insights that are the result of those models, how are those being used? That's where we need real transparency and guidelines so that people can trust actually authentically learning and trying to build skills.
Moez, I saw you were ready.
Thank you, Val. Keeping with the magic tricks, can I play magic trick with the audience? Are you ready? Please take your cell phones. Yes, look at the time. Remember the time. Then put your cell phones on the table or right next to you. Then raise your right hand. Raise your right hand, please. Yeah, raise your right hand. Good. Try to clap with one hand. Do everything you can. It doesn't work. Try to clap with two hands. Thank you. That was my magic trick. What I want to illustrate here is it is really hard, if not impossible, to clap with one hand. Dealing with AI in our society, making sure that we assure ethical, transparent, just use of AI cannot be done by businesses alone, by government alone, or by educational institutions alone. Like clapping, we need everybody to collaborate to make sure that we assure that ethical, responsible use of AI. And this is, for example, at the University of North Florida, this is exactly what we are doing. We go to businesses and work with their experts. Our faculty works with their experts to say, what are the skills that you are needing now so that our students, your future employees, will be responsible, ethical users of AI. That will influence our curriculum, and also we're developing micro-credentials that every student has to take. We even open it to the community so that we can assure that ethical, transparent, and responsible usage of AI. Thank you for playing with
Thank you for your magic trick. Kim.
I'm not that creative. On a little bit of a different twist, we were at a ladies' luncheon yesterday, and one of the things that one of the panelists who spoke to us about AI said really resonated with me, and I think it's important. So as we're moving forward, we need to educate people, we need to have curriculum begin to bring AI into it, but we also are going to need to help learners to really ask questions and learn how. And that was one of the panelists' points was, like, I started to think about, her point was right. My 18-year-old, he needs to get more curious. He needs to ask a lot more questions. And we need to build that skill, because to truly take advantage of what AI can do for you, you need to have that piece where you are really able to ask the questions. The only other thing I would say is, when we begin to think about it, critical thinking is going to be really important as we move forward to your points. When we begin to think about the answer to some questions, maybe we have to say, is the AI right? Is the AI wrong? And we need to be able to teach people how to distinguish where it's right and where it's wrong so we can stop it before it does anything that it shouldn't be doing when it's wrong.
Can I just add one thing?
Please.
I'm just listening to this conversation and bringing it back to the learnability, which, you know, learning how critical thinking, et cetera. And what my big question is how digital social media is really impacting the brains of all of us that really engage with it. So this notion of, you know, learnability and like really teaching people to ask the right questions, maybe through prompt engineering, but just giving them the opportunity to really dig into that and test that, I think is really super critical. And I think this is why we've shifted to more short-form learning, as opposed to expecting our adult learners, or, you know, even young learners, candidly, go through even credentialed degrees is just a harder skill. So it's this impact on our brain that I'm super fascinated about, and how AI is going to, yeah.
So to build on that, so one of the real powers is that people are talking about is a lot of the AI right now is just being used to create more efficiency, doing the things we've always done just faster, better, letting the AI take care of that, which is lovely, but it's not the power. You know, the power is it allows our learners to engage more creatively, because you're not just having to respond to a multiple choice question. But it also, the other place where it creates much more inclusion and access is for all the people who are trying to teach someone else something, whether they're formal teachers or managers or mentors or attending physicians. We all have expertise that we want to share with someone else, but we're not very good at designing learning experiences that actually support someone to learn something. Like, how many of you would really know how to build a good contrasting case to make a point, or a good analogy, or give a worked example? So most of us just kind of resort to, let me tell you, and then I'll ask you questions to see if you understood what I told you, which historically, from all our research in the sciences of learning, that is the most ineffective way to help someone build a skill or knowledge. So my hope for the Gen AI is it makes it easy for other people to come up with and create, like I can go to the Gen AI and say, give me a contrasting case that illustrates this in this context. And it can give that to me that then I can use to support my learners. The even better thing about that is if that's all done in a digital format, then I come up with a strategy, I implement it, the learners do it, we get an outcome on whether or not that actually supported the learners to learn the knowledge and skill I was trying to support them to learn. And that's how we build a big, inclusive data set that will help us then train models of how to personalize learning better.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Moez, I want to start with you because you already connected the fact that we needed an ecosystem to do this work well. Can you talk a little bit about that ecosystem and our individual and collective responsibility for bringing this to fruition?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's really important to develop that ecosystem. And how can we make sure, as I mentioned earlier, we all work together? I think there is a need for framework for collaboration. That framework for collaboration should bring educational institutions, businesses, government, non-profit, so that they all can share experiences, share best practices, share knowledge about AI. Also, what is really important is to develop an incentive structure that actually recognize ethical, responsible, transparent, inclusive use of AI. Why don't we have grants that prone and facilitate this collaboration? That's really important. Also, when we talk about incentive structures, you know, my dream is maybe one day we develop an index on which we can assess, evaluate, rank different organizations on the extent to which they make effective, efficient, ethical use and transparent use of AI. I think these are the things that we should really be doing. And this is not one single segment of our society's job, but is everybody's job. But also, I really, if I may, just very quickly, because we talk a lot about AI, but sometimes we forget about the foundations of human communication, human interactions. Unfortunately, we live in a more than ever divided society where people listen to attack, they listen to reply, they don't listen to understand, where hate is taking over. I think we can bring AI, but as long as we don't solve these problems and teach, going back to the basics on teaching people how to disagree, it is okay. If I don't see the same things the same way, I still respect you. And I'm a better person if I just take the time to listen to you. Once we cover these foundations, the use of AI on how to help us bridge these differences in our society will be amazing.
You know what, Moez, on that, you don't want
Right?
that happen to you. So the shared values, right? Sharing the same values. But I was reading about this professor who said, we're going to need a whole lot more vitamin C as AI comes along. And I was like, what? What's he talking about, vitamin C? And the vitamin C he was talking about was connection, human connection. And I would add their communication, because having a healthy debate is what we should be doing about this if we're going to do everything that we've all been talking about. And if we just agree or ignore and go the opposite direction, we're going to be in a very bad place in the next few years.
Lorraine.
Yeah, I think maybe lift up a little bit on this conversation to say that everyone in this room, I can safely say, we have a collective purpose. And the purpose is we want to ensure that our American workforce has access to opportunity and pathways that lead them to meaningful work, higher paid jobs, et cetera. So the one thing I would say is we definitely, Moez, to your great point, we cannot do this alone. We have to collectively be aligned to that purpose and work towards that. And I would say one interesting thing that we are doing next week, which is honestly pretty much an experiment, which is Walmart is hosting what we're calling the Opportunity Summit, and we've brought 15 companies together, government officials, educators, and we're really digging in deep as a working session to talk about how do we create opportunity for the workforce, how do we use and really lean into skills plus, skills first hiring, because we've talked a lot about it, you hear a lot of buzz around it, but how do we actually operationalize it? Meaning, for us, we announced several months ago that we're removing degree requirements for the majority of our roles. Well, that's great, and we're very much behind it, and we've had a history of doing that for many, many years since the inception of the company. But now, as we say, look, it's for the majority of roles, how do we actually do this? And that's going to require all of us to be thinking about it from an ecosystem perspective, not just from a technical perspective, but how do we get that ecosystem like hiring managers who think that you have to have a credentialed degree in order to do XYZ job. We're going to bring everybody together and really workshop that out next week. So I'm super excited about that and looking forward to the collaboration.
Awesome. Candace.
Yeah, so I'm going to build on what you said too. We should talk. So part of what we need is kind of a broadly accepted job skills ontology, so that any given role, you could say these are the knowledge and capabilities that someone would need to have to be successful in that role. And then we need this other big data set I was talking about, which talks about, given this set of features about this learner, this set of features about the skill or knowledge they're trying to build, and this context in which the knowledge will be applied or where it's going to be developed, what's the next best intervention? What's the next best move for that learner to support them to move from their current state to their desired state? And then how do we communicate that to the learner or to whoever's trying to support the learner in a way that is actionable and doable and responsive?
We have time for one final question, and I will start by answering it. So the question is, what shouldn't we forget? And as I'm listening to you all and looking in the room, we can't forget that there are many people, because we are privileged to be a part of this conversation, to be in San Diego, to be at this conference.
We all have cell phones.
Absolutely.
That's a manifestation
Absolutely. We
of
have
privilege.
access and opportunity that many people who are going to be impacted by all of these changes do not. And so I implore you all to not forget those people when you are engaging in conversation, to make sure you make a way to include them and have meaningful public engagement so that we can continue to build trust and make sure that we are not forgetting people. What are some other things that we shouldn't forget as we close this conversation?
I like that one. I second that one. And I think as we're building technical infrastructures that collects these data, we need to be aware of from whose data are we collecting and how are we using it and how are we collecting it and who's getting to create the feature sets that we think are important to collect for the data.
Thank you.
I think I would say let's not forget that we are in our society, our country, I think the world is an inflection point. Mm-hmm. We can emphasize AI so that the jobs are displaced, that biases are focused on, that we forget the people from unfavorable socioeconomic status, or we can all work together so that we live in a society and in a world where no one is left behind. I think AI can help us do that.
I'm going to take a different twist.
Yeah.
You knew that. So I agree with everything, by the way. Yes, 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 yes. The one thing we have not had a chance to talk about today that I think we cannot forget is the opportunity in education that AI brings, and the opportunity to be able to turn education on its head, help a teacher to utilize AI for their lesson planning so that they can spend more time with their students, to create learning in context for students and break down some language barriers and help students who otherwise wouldn't get the attention they need get it from AI. And I know I watched Saul Khan do a TED Talk that was incredible. And I just think that we can't forget the opportunity here to really get people from the day they walk into our schools and change that experience.
I guess I'll end in 9 seconds to say that we cannot forget why we're doing this. And for me personally, every store or club that I walk into from Walmart, I ask our associates, what do you want to be when you grow up, you know? And I feel personal responsibility, as does Walmart, to make that happen. And that's why we're here. That's what we need to do.
Thank you all. Thank you, panelists, for your time today and your brilliance. Enjoy the rest of the conference.